The Athenians rally the rest of the Greek city-states and, with a series of heroic military victories, drive out the Persian invaders. With the foreign threat neutralized and nearly 200 cities across the Aegean paying into a mutual defense fund, Athens grows wealthy. It's now 450 BCE, and a former general emerges as leader, Pericles. He spearheads an ambitious campaign to rebuild Athens and ushers in the golden age of Greece. A unique window of time that establishes Western ideals of beauty, science, art, and a radical new form of government. Demos, meaning people, and kratos, power, people power, or democracy.
This is the area of Athens just beyond the Acropolis where male citizens came to vote. We think that during the 5th century, the assembly would have comprised about 30,000, perhaps up to 40,000 male citizens.
Mid-5th century Athens was a golden age because of the constellation of powerful intellects who gathered there.
Socrates studies philosophy here. Hippocrates, considered the founder of modern medicine, according to later traditions, visited Athens. Herodotus, father of history, and Thucydides write detailed accounts of this time.
Theater especially flourished. And this was a time of Sophocles and Euripides performing their wonderful plays to the public in these theaters, including this particular one, the Theater of Dionysus, on the south slope of the Acropolis.
But while all of Athens flourishes, the Acropolis still lay in ruins from the Persian invasion. Then, in 449 BCE, Pericles proposes to rebuild the temples destroyed by the Persians. He opens the question to debate.
Every monument, every element of the Periclean building program had to be voted upon so that these monuments would in fact be monuments of the democracy and not of one man, such as Pericles himself.
In a powerful statement of their self-confidence, the people of Athens vote to rebuild the Acropolis. And at its center, a building to embody their ideals. The Parthenon. The Parthenon would be the largest building in the world constructed entirely of marble. And in tracing the path of that marble lies the first clue as to how it was built. Before the Parthenon, marble had been imported from quarries on islands in the Aegean Sea. On one of those islands, Naxos, archaeologists discover a small temple.
On the beautiful island of Naxos, we see this temple, which is one of the early archaic Greek temples made of stone.
The Temple of Demeter was constructed about 100 years before the Parthenon. It too was built with few right angles or straight lines.
We can indicate already the curvature of the base of the temple, also the widening of the lower part of the columns.
Why are these builders deliberately constructing their temples with curves and few right angles? Professor Margaret Livingstone, a Harvard neurobiologist, believes the ancient Greeks might have been aware of optical illusions.
The function of the visual system is not to transmit an image to the brain. There's nobody up there to look at an image. It's to transmit information about the world up to the brain.
Our brain translates visual information, like converging lines, to help us assess distance and relative size. But sometimes something's lost in translation. Here, the converging lines are telling us that the line on the right is taller than the line on the left. The result, an optical illusion.
This is another classical illusion. If you have two straight lines, if you add converging lines, these two lines seem to bow in the middle. So if the floor of the Parthenon has converging cues as to depth and perspective, you could have an illusory sag in the floor of the Parthenon.
Perhaps to compensate for the illusory sag, the builders left extra marble in the middle. The ancient Greeks realized that to construct a building that appears perfect, they would have to come up with a design that tricks the eye. What they invent is a system of optical refinements.
Their concern was the visual perfection of the building.
This small stone temple on Naxos provides evidence of the Greeks' keen observation over hundreds of years.
Here we can see the first optical refinements already experimented by the people building the temple. Here lies literally the DNA of the Parthenon.
But even with the wealth of Periclean Athens, it was too expensive to bring so much marble from the islands to the mainland. Fortunately, the Athenians discover a rich source of marble 11 miles from the Acropolis. The Pentelicon quarry became one of the largest and deepest marble quarries in the world and is the source for the restoration today. In minutes, diamond-tipped saws cut through the same stone used by the ancients. Nikos Toganidis, the architect in charge of day-to-day operations on the Parthenon restoration, is searching for a flawless 12-ton block.
Today we are going to check a marble that George found here in the quarry. It's going to be an architrave. It's the last large member that we need for the restoration of the north side.
The restoration team has waited months for just the right block to make the new architrave, the marble support beam above the columns. It costs over $1 million and will have to support up to 20 tons.
Let's measure it. Let's see if we have the length of the marble that we need.
It seems perfect, except for a hidden vein, which could compromise its structural integrity.
If there is the problem, then the sound is quite different. Now it sounds as a bell. So we are going to buy. Giorgo, bravo.
At the time of Pericles, teams of quarrymen extracted an estimated 100,000 tons of marble from Pentelicon. The cost of extracting and transporting it, inscribed in part on this stone placard from 434 BCE, was over 400 silver talents, the equivalent of more than 400 of their fully equipped warships.
Expenses for the construction of the Parthenon were recorded on stone annually. The stone was actually set up on the Acropolis. This is because Athens had a democratic system of government, so they required that the expenditure of public monies be made public.
The rest of the construction budget was spent on carving that marble. In that sense, the workplace today, as in ancient times, is less a construction site and more a sculptor's studio.
We have, in some cases, to form a new drum from 100 different pieces. That is a very, very difficult work.
Here, the restorers recovered a part of an original capital, but were missing the pieces to fit around it. they had to carve them by hand from the newly quarried Pentelic marble. They start by making a plaster cast of a missing piece. Then they use this ancient mason's device called a pantograph to record the three-dimensional shape of the cast and transfer it point by point to the new marble.
It's a very traditional technique. Even the Romans were using the same device to copy the sculptures in antiquity.
Once a new piece is completed, they can join it with an old. But will their new piece fit? It doesn't. It's just millimeters off. The moderns will borrow a technique used by the ancients for fitting together two new blocks. They coat the inside surface with red clay.
In the points it doesn't fit, it leaves white marks. Where the clay goes white, they have to carve it a little bit more and test it again until they have no marks when they are closing the two pieces.
The operation is repeated dozens of times until the new marble exactly matches the ancient broken surface. But even when they succeed, there's still the challenge of fitting the restored pieces precisely back into place. After months of painstaking work, drum number 14192 doesn't quite make it.
As you see here, we have a small ancient fragment. We built around it with the new addition. Now we are going to move it and take it down to the workshop.
Just a few millimeters of excess new white marble has to be cut from the base at ever so slight an angle to match the precision of the original blocks.
These differences of 1 or 2 millimeters is just a miracle. You can't believe that you have so small differences.
And here lies the Parthenon's central mystery. How did the ancients sculpt it with such precision and speed?
Ήταν βλέποντας εδώ ένα σπόνδυλο του προνάου, πάνω στον οποίο υπήρχαν αυτές οι γραμμές.
Etched into the marble itself, Manolis Koris finds a clue.
Καταλάβετε τι είναι αυτό? Το έχετε δει ποτέ σας? Δεν έχετε δει ποτέ αυτό?
Koris made an extensive study of the relationship between tool marks and the kind of tool and force necessary to produce them. From these marks, he reconstructed a type of chisel lost since antiquity. The marks led Koris to identify a range of tools that reflect centuries of expertise in metallurgy, enabling the Greeks to produce sharper and more durable tools than we have today. And from minute differences in the chisel marks, Koris can even identify the distinctive workmanship of about 200 different stonemasons. They were recruited from throughout the Greek islands and would have had many different systems of measurement. Without a common standard, coordinating this workforce would have been a logistical nightmare. How did they do it? One answer lies on the island of Salamis, not far from Athens. Here, discovered on a church wall, was a stone carving. Today, it is in the Piraeus Museum.